Casey Richards with the CDGA here at Midwest Golf House in Lamont. And joining us here on CDGA TV is a special guest, Matt Ginella, longtime golf personality. You may know him from past stints at Golf Channel, Golf Advisor, certainly a golf travel guru. Matt, thank you very much for taking the time to check in with us today.
Thanks for having me, Casey.
You know, as I alluded to there, you've certainly held multiple roles in the golf industry, and we'll talk about, you know, what you're up to currently a little bit later on. But where I wanted to start is one of your newest appointments, and that's as a board member of Youth on Course. Youth on Course, the national organization that provides affordable access rounds of golf to individuals 6 to 18, ages 6 to 18. We at the CDGA and the CDGA Foundation administer the program locally. So we were certainly excited to see that, you know, such a prominent figure was getting involved with the program at the national level. What was it about what Youth on Course does that made you want to get involved with YOC?
Man, you know, this goes back several years now. I was on site at the reopening of Poppy Hills, the home of the Northern California Golf Association, doing just a little hit for Golf Channel and Morning Drive. And I'm from Northern California. I'm currently and still an NCGA member, and grew up playing those events. And I was there surrounded by a bunch of NCGA members. Robert Trent Jones Jr. was there to sort of reintroduce his redo of the golf course. And someone got up and said, "Oh, you know, really proud of this initiative, this program that we've started, Youth on Course, where, you know, the NCGA was essentially working in concert with this team of people who had this idea of subsidizing green fees for kids. The we know First Tee now well over 20 years, been around, that it does a great job of getting a club in a kid's hand. 9 core values. Can't say enough about that program, but the questions still remain. How can kids still afford the game of golf? Like, it's one thing to get them interested in it. It's another to actually make it affordable for them. And then when they get that access, when it becomes affordable, they bring their parents with them, or they bring friends with them. And then they have those lifetime or life-changing experiences, like I'm sure you've had, like I've had, like almost everybody who has played the game of golf. And I think that's the motivating factor behind Youth on Course. The Morton family is obviously a big donor and supporter, but anybody who's given money, who's participated in sort of the efforts, I think has had these kinds of life-changing experiences. And that's what it's all about. For some reason, us as golfers cannot give back enough to the next generations, because we not only do we want to share it with our friends, like, oh, golf is great, takes us to all these great places and we meet all these great people and we have all these great experiences, but we want to make sure that our kids get that same experience, because it's rich and it's a lifetime. It's super impactful. I say any caddy experience is like an internship. So I at that time when I heard I heard this concept, wait a minute, so you're going to subsidize green fees, get kids on courses for $5 or less. And it's a pretty simplified process. Raise a bunch of money, get a bunch of members, and make sure they can play golf for not a lot of money. It started building. The momentum started building. It went from 1 golf association to 2 to 5 to 10 to 20. And now in 31 different states, golf associations, Canada, they've gotten phone calls from Scotland, from, from Australia. Like, that's how effective this has become. And it's a pretty short amount of time. Let's say it's 7 years that I've been covering this for the Golf Channel every year, just sort of checking in, monitoring, become close with these guys, try to do anything I can to help and support this program, because everybody wins. The kid wins, the course wins, the parents win, the game of golf wins. So, when you get that kind of scenario, I can't. And then they called me and said, "Hey, would you like to become a board member?" And for me, again, going back, knowing what you know now, from Northern California, stumbled upon this, love at first sight, watching it grow and build momentum. It's literally sweeping the country. And for me to be able to now have even more impact, on the program, on kids, it's an honor, really, honestly.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, the CDGA and the CDGA Foundation, proud to be one of those, allied golf associations that administers the program on the local level here in Illinois and throughout the entirety of the Chicago district. And Matt, as I'm sure from a national perspective, the program has just kind of exploded this year. Here in Illinois, Youth on Course members have posted more than 1,000 rounds so far in 2020, 1,000 rounds more than they posted for the entirety of 2019. And that's pretty amazing considering there were no rounds posted in April and May with a lot of the restrictions in place.
Wow.
1,500 more members this year as opposed to 2019 here in Illinois. So what do you think accounts for this sort of large influx of youth golfers that we're seeing in 2020, particularly through the Youth on Course program?
I mean, I know it's pretty layered. I'm not going to try to be able to answer it all, but I mean, homeschooling, soccer being canceled, baseball being canceled, basketball being canceled, football being canceled, parents with more time, to also, and the need and demand to be able to be outdoors, to be able to socially distance and yet also have an activity that makes sense and have it be sensible. So is that all of it? Probably not, but that's a big chunk of it, and then you also have peak season golf season, right? So you have the sun is out and, you wouldn't see that obviously where you are in the winter, but it all came sort of spring, summer. Now we're into fall. This is, this is peak season. And, and therein lies the rub, as I'm sure you're probably experiencing. The more successful Youth on Course is, the more members, the more rounds, the more money you need to subsidize that, the more contributions, the more donations, the more fundraising, the more, and that's, so they're literally, Youth on Course is a victim of their own success, quite literally and figuratively. It's a situation in which they now need to really, everybody needs to really roll up their sleeves and get this word out and build on this momentum to say, obviously we have a system in place that's working. This is, more attention as it so deserves, but because of that, it needs more funds. And so that's why I think we're all in this together. We need to, the Youth on Course and Adam Hike and his team do a great job of sharing best practices and supporting, as I'm sure you've experienced, the support that they offer to try to make sure that these golf associations are getting it going and getting it going right and getting it on its way. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to community. It still comes down to people realizing that in my community, in my city or my course or my county or my state or country for that matter, you just shrink it down. And if you look around, how can you get involved? How can you help fundraise? Do you have a friend that's looking to try to have, has some money and wants to have an impact? What better way of impacting your community than through kids, outdoors, golf, the life experiences that the game provides? All of that equals goodness. That's my feeling.
Yes, absolutely, Matt. And, obviously we're huge proponents of the program and our administer it, locally. But as you said, the program needs support from golfers, from family members, and everything like that. So yes, anybody watching out there, you can visit cdgafoundation.org to donate to the Youth on Course program here locally, or youthoncourse.org to donate to the program at a national scope. So shifting gears slightly, obviously throughout the course of your career, your golf travel has taken you all throughout the world, really, to some of the best courses in the world, the most unique destinations in the world. And when you consider Chicago and Illinois, maybe not thought of as a golf destination per se, but I know you've been here quite a few times in the past to play some of the courses around here. And in reading your work, I know you feel like that it really does kind of stand up as a golf destination, so to speak, even though it may not be prominently thought of in that light.
Well, I mean, I love Chicago. I love Chicago, the city. And, a lot of what I do in my travels is, yes, I play the courses, we sample the golf, I always try to do some cultural deep dives as well and connect with locals or caddies or chefs or music, or I've always tried to layer in, because on any trip it's so much more than just the golf. And so for me, Chicago is a prime golf destination. Not unlike some of the other great big cities in America: New York, Philadelphia, San Francisco, San Diego, Austin. You know, there's so much to do. You got a ton of great golf in almost every one of those locations. Some of the best golf is private, and that's true certainly in Chicago and New York and Philadelphia. But there's also some high quality, good value public golf. I really I fell in love with Cantini the first time I saw it. And then going back to youth on course and kids, and way they incorporate kids into their business model, to me is genius. I look to Cantini as one of the true blueprints as to what some of these golf courses should aspire to be, reimagine themselves. 18 holes, 9-hole kids course, junior program, caddy camps, all that kind of stuff makes sense. I just was recently in Chicago, got a chance to play. I love the Glen Club. It's not necessarily, it's a little pricier than sort of most, but I mean, I think they deliver on a quality experience. The greens at the Glen Club were as good as the greens at, I played Skokie, Shore Acres on this last trip. I mean, the Merritt Club was in mint condition. I caught it at a really good time. I mean, the superintendents in Chicago, I think today is actually, a Superintendent's Day, or Superintendent's Appreciation Day. So, kudos to all the superintendents at all the courses that I just mentioned, because all of them were in mint condition. And then you just got great, you know, uh, prestige and history and stories behind all these clubs. So you don't have to sell me on Chicago. I'd go there in a heartbeat, and never feel like I'm ever being cheated on great golf.
Absolutely. And then, in Chicago, we're also fortunate to be just a short drive away from a ton of other great golf destinations. Wisconsin just to the north of us, Michigan close by, Indiana, a lot of great, premier resort areas. For CDGA members watching this, what's maybe a trip or two that you would say to them, like, look, you have to do this at some point, during your golfing career?
Well, you got a lot of drive. A couple, Sand Valley, obviously in Wisconsin, and then Forest Dunes in Michigan. I think I think I would imagine a lot of people from Chicago have done one or both, especially in these COVID times, where I think everybody's looking for like a 3 to 5 hour drive to make it feel like, oh, I'm getting away, I'm getting out. And I think both of those places, I mean, Sand Valley is part of the Dream Golf portfolio. The Kaiser family, Michael and Chris Kaiser, have really been sort of the focus of the development there. And, they've got Mammoth Dunes and the Sand Valley course, and then they got the par three course. You know, they've got grass tennis courts that I've realizing that some people are incorporating into their buddies trips, like tennis matches. I'm not a tennis player, but if to see those grass courts in the middle of that dunes land makes me want to play tennis. You know what I mean? That's good. And then Forest Dunes has the reversible routing with Tom Doak, which is an interesting and unique experience. And they got a great Tom Weisskopf design. And then they got another 10-hole par three course that just opened up. And they've got the same kind of buddies trip culture, fire pits, cottages, non-pretentious, presentation with friendly service. So, I speak highly of both of those places for good reason.
Definitely. Now you mentioned, Sand Valley and the Kaiser family. Mike Kaiser, a Chicago native, the first course he ever designed, the Dunes Club in New Buffalo, Michigan, is a CDGA member course. So he has strong ties to the Chicagoland area and the Chicago district. Obviously, his empire has kind of since expanded to all corners of the country, even up into Canada. What is it about his resorts and the experience at those places that make them so popular and make people keep wanting to go back to them?
It's something I've been studying and covering and admiring and appreciating for the better part of 15 years now. And i- if I were to try to simplify it, it's just his total focus on delivering a quality experience and great value, which is a relative term, great value to the quote retail golfer. So he's not chasing a tour event. He's not chasing a US Open. He's not trying to get 7,800 yards. He's not trying to create the kind of undulations and the green speeds that are going to cause, wreak havoc on the person who might only be playing 5 to 7 times a year. He's going to get those people who play 5 to 7 times a year to focus on playing his properties 5 to 7 times a year, and as he has said, and then it's the formula, one course is a curiosity, two makes a destination, 1 + 1 = 3. You start getting people hunkering down, and then, his sensibility, his understanding, his ability to listen, to watch, and to learn from his clientele, to know that to pivot, so building big golf at Bandon, realize not everybody can play 36 a day of classic walking golf, but that people were staying, 4 to 5 days building the putting course, the short course, so that you can play 18 one day with a short course and 36 the next day of big course. It's just, it sounds so simple, right? But for some reason, not no one was doing it, and for me, it seems crazy that not enough people are still doing it. Like the short course is now caught on, and that's a it's not just a trend. That's happening. That is, it's part of the fabric of now the Pinehurst and the Sand Valleys and the Forest Dunes. And now Kohler's going to build a short course. Like almost, if you don't have a short course, you've missed out. And I think that has a lot to do with Mike Kaiser. And so his dedication and hyper focus on the golf, on, like, don't forget to be a golf destination. You got to have really good golf. And then you can sort of layer in the lodging and the amenities and because what he proved and he thought by going to the Dornicks and all the different other remote locations, Sand Hills in Nebraska, he realized people go anywhere if you deliver great golf. And so that's what he's been delivering. And he does it again and again and again. And he'll continue to do so, like he told me, until he dies. And then you've got his sons who have picked up the baton, and they're not stopping either. So the good news for us as retail golfers is somebody or a family who's been focused on us as retailers, the people who pay to play. There's somebody building it for us.
Mhm. Absolutely. Now, at the outset of the pandemic, as was the case across the board, I mean, there was a lot of uncertainty facing the golf industry. Some courses weren't able to open. There were various restrictions in place across the country. But kind of building upon what we were talking about with golf from a youth perspective earlier, the game has really bounced back very strongly. Rounds are now projected to be up for 2020 on a nationwide perspective over 2019. So it's definitely come back in big ways. But I think kind of the $1 million question that I know a lot of people in the industry are now facing is how can we make this a long-term success story? Keep some of those players in who maybe picked up the clubs for the first time or for the first time in a while, and keep them involved in the game moving forward. What are your thoughts as to what golf can do to kind of keep this wave going moving forward?
Well, the good news is we've been doing it. If you and I are having this conversation trying to figure out how to keep them, right now, we'd be too late. I think we got this tsunami of interest back in the late 90s when Tiger Woods came on the scene and sort of, filled our living rooms with this amazing display of excellence, and unlike we had seen since the likes of Jack Nicklaus, obviously. And when we got that interest, we messed it up. It was, the golf courses were too big, they were too hard, the game took too long, there were too many rules, too many no's. This is a service industry. And how many people are going to go to a restaurant if the food is bad, if you can't get a table, if you get told turned away at the door because you're not wearing the right clothes or the right pair of shoes, or you can't play music, can't have fun? Are you going to go back to that restaurant? No, we don't do that. That's not the way we consume a service industry. And so for the last, the good news is for the last 2 decades, the industry, I think, has done a great job of communicating. It takes too long, it's too hard, and it costs too much money. So here comes short courses, Top Golf, Youth on Course, first heat, PGA Junior Leagues, um, you know, uh, uh, sort of music. This is the kind of stuff, less emphasis on sort of what we're wearing and more warm hugs when people come to the game for the first time to say, hey, oh, you're a new golfer. Well, come on, here's a place for you. Here's clubs for you. Here's the technology has been a huge benefit for new golfers. Getting fit for clubs it matters. The kind of shoes you're wearing, they matter instead of going out and getting blisters every time. So all of this, again, I'm not going to be able to claim to know that I know the total formula, but I think a big chunk of what I just discussed is a reason why kids who have not been playing soccer or baseball or basketball or football might actually who have picked up clubs and have had some fun with their friends, or on short courses or putting courses or at Top Golf, might continue to be a part of the game in some way, shape, or form. We're not going to keep them all, but I know the number is going to be more than zero, and it's because of the programs that have been put in place the last 2 decades.
Absolutely. It'll certainly be interesting to see how the industry progresses over the next few years. Another initiative being pushed that you had mentioned, are 9-hole rounds as well. Get out. You don't always have to go play
Correct.
18 holes for 4.5 hours. Sneak out for 9 and play in an hour and a half, 2 hours. So yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like you said, the industry has almost been kind of priming for a moment like this in terms of making it more accessible to everybody. And yeah, it's encouraging to see the early results so far. Just to finish up, we talked about your new role with Youth on Course earlier. I know 2020 has also brought about a lot of different new ventures for you as well, in the form of a podcast, a production company, and things like that. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about what's on your plate right now, as I'm sure it's a lot and that you're juggling a lot of stuff going on.
Well, I mean, it's exciting. I think I started in the photo department at Sports Illustrated, and then I got my journalism degree and started writing at Golf Digest and Golf World magazines, and then I went on to broadcast at Golf Channel, and so I think that essentially, the toolbox of skills sort of only naturally led me to the place in which I just wanted to have a little more control over my content, a little more control over my schedule and my life. I've got a little guy now who's 3, who, and I was on the road for 247 days in 2019. It was pretty extreme, and fun, but I just think I needed a little more balance, a little more sense of again, goes back to kind of the control aspect. And I've got a great team around me, and we started, we have a distribution partnership in place now with Golf Digest and Discovery Media. The podcast is already available anywhere you listen to podcasts, called The Fire Pit with Matt Ginella. And we're just telling, for me, it's all about storytelling. The common denominator of everything that I'm going to continue to do is just try to find and tell good stories. And whether that's in podcast form or short digital form, or, medium form, longer form, whatever that may be, that will be to be determined. But I've got a good team around me. I've got some talented shooters, good editors, a great producer. I've got, and just a sort of a sense of of what's happening from a story perspective. So that's what we're going to be doing, and looking forward to doing it.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to following along with all the coverage that you produce, Matt. And we really thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and to share a little bit of your insight about, the industry, some travel recommendations, and also, delve into a little bit about Youth on Course and what makes it special and to you and near and dear to your heart. So thank you very much for taking the time. Thanks for your support of the game, and best of luck with everything moving forward.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Hope we get to tee it up at some point soon.
For sure.